A good horror game is something special. It is able not just to challenge us with its gameplay or tell a good story, but to scare us, to haunt our dreams and idle thoughts, even to make us question our own perceptions of reality. In this podcast, we meet the developers of both existing popular horror titles and hotly anticipated upcoming ones to discuss how they do it, what inspires them, and all things spooky and unnerving. Welcome to Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Hello and welcome to Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. I'm Phil from the Horror Game Awards, and with me as my co-host today, we have one of our jury members, Avery or Sovacito, and we are absolutely delighted to be speaking to Dave Mervik of Tarsier Studios, who people will know as creators of Little Nightmares 1 and 2, and currently working on the delightfully creepy-looking Reanimal. So, Dave, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, no worries. Nice to meet you both.
It's a pleasure.
And how's it going at the moment in the process? Busy, I imagine.
Yeah, it's quite busy. We're never happy kind of with wherever we're at, whether it's in the beginning or like coming, nearing towards the business end of game making. We always feel like we can do better. So it's we're never too far from stressful times, but hopefully the end result is worth it. Just about.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure it will be. Before we get into like things proper and start having a conversation about all things, I think for anyone who doesn't know, I imagine most people will, but they've seen Reanimal and seen the teaser trailers. Do you want to give us a bit of a kind of glimpse into what it's about and what you're hoping to do with it?
With Reanimal, yeah, I mean, I can give you like a little intro about like what the premise is, if that's what you.
Yeah, for sure.
For those who haven't seen the trailer, it doesn't give too much away. It's about you play as two kids, a boy and a girl, and you grew up on this island, which was once upon a time a nicer place, and then something happens which you don't get to see, but you get to take part in the fallout from that, and it just kind of destroys this place that they grew up in. And so your job as the players is to kind of work together and like explore this place that you used to live in, and rescue your mates one by one, and at the same time kind of piece together what you think might have happened, to make this this place what it is now. So yeah, co-op is the order of the day in this one. Co-op horror.
What made you come up with the name Reanimal, and how long was the game in production? Like, how long have you guys been working on the game?
I think it's been like 3-ish years now in terms of how long we've been working on it. We started after LN2, obviously, but it's been many different things, this game. Like in the beginning, it kind of started somewhere else, and gradually you kind of one by one you kind of go, oh, that's nice, but this kind of stuff, I mean, it's quite a standard process, that, isn't it? You always start in one place when you're working on anything with a group of people, and then it kind of evolves. So and part of that evolution was the animals, because wherever it started story wise and gameplay wise, we started seeing concept art coming through, and like we found we started, when we saw anything that had animals in it, we really reacted positively, is a weird term, but you kind of see these like grotesque depictions of animals, or kind of really quite tragic scenes with featuring animals in it. Like, oh, we've not had anything like that before. In the past it's always been kids or adults or something. There's always been human beings and then or monsters. But when we started seeing these animals, them in the mix with the kind of worlds we create felt really, really nice to us and felt like we could kind of bring something that felt fresh. Name-wise, though, that came ages later. It was a really tough process to find something that we liked and that kind of reflected the game and the kind of themes we were exploring. Our now CEO came up with it, which it seems he loves taking credit for that. Yeah, just name the game. All that. We almost missed it because we were just throwing names everywhere. Like, there's got to be something that kind of really, really works for what we're doing, and nothing felt good enough. And then we just almost missed this message where he just had a bunch of them, and Pella, our art director, he kind of just slammed the brakes. I was like, hang on a minute, what was that one? And we all kind of like homed in on this thing, and it's like, it was nice to say it had kind of this idea of animals in there, which we were working with, and so there was lots in there to unpick for us. So it felt like we found the name. It was nice.
Perfect. I do have one more another question. I know you brought this game's going to be a co-op experience. Why did you guys lean towards a co-op based game versus a single player experience with like a computer or AI to follow you around, kind of like the Little Nightmares experience as well?
Yeah. Well, we were looking originally at just like single player because we'd done that before. We had experience with that. And it came up very early on when we were trying to like figure out what this game was. What if we made a co-op? And we were like, oh no, because we tried that, we'd thought about that before, and the amount of like work and heartache that goes into making co-op feel nice, just puzzle design or everywhere you have more to think about, which we didn't have experience in. So we kind of shied away from it in the beginning. And then it came back again, because we were still looking for that extra little element to make this again feel worth all the time and love we were going to put into it. And co-op came back as that. It's like, how much co-op horror is out there already? Like, there wasn't that much. If anything, we couldn't think of anything at the time. And we started talking about that, and probably heard me say this before, but like that feeling of what experiencing horror or scary times with someone else is a different beast than experiencing it on your own. And that felt like a balance that we enjoyed as well, because we don't, even though this is a lot more horror and dreadful than we've done before, we still like that kind of nice blend between something that feels a little bit nicer, a little bit lighter, something you can enjoy however nasty it is. And that co-op aspect kind of brought that to it for us, So it was that we just thought, and we'd seen people play in our past games co-op anyway. People, even if you're playing as mono and you got 6 the AI buddy, they still acted as though you were in it together, no, do that. And it felt like people kind of were looking for that kind of experience in what we do. So we started to think maybe it is worth a headache, maybe it is worth gaining that experience and pushing ourselves to be better in that area, So yeah, we just went for it, took the leap.
Was that a challenge because you've got it where you can play co-op, obviously co-op like couch co-op or online, but you can also play it single player still, so making it so that presumably you've got puzzles that you need to solve with 2 people, but also you can still do it with single player with an AI. That must have been tough.
It's a tricky balance to get right, that one. But we didn't want to exclude anyone. Like It Takes Two did that, didn't they? Like give it with a friend pass and all that. But some people like to play things on their own, and so we wanted to give them the ability to do that. But then you got to think, well, what can the AI do that your mate can also do, and all that. So finding that level of puzzle is a thing to be borne in mind the whole time. But yeah, again, go for it.
How long do plan on having the game be like hours wise, like how much gameplay should people that are playing this game should expect?
Oh,
I know, hard question. Because
Yeah.
people can look for
Speed
lore and
runners,
all that
obviously.
stuff. in a general scheme.
Now we're aiming for like 6 hours, but like
Okay.
our mantra is always quality over quantity. So
Sure.
it could be 6 to 8 hours. We're doing our best, but if something isn't good enough, that's where our focus has got to be. You know, like we want people, and it's always been the case, you know, that anything that doesn't earn its place in the game is to the detriment of that game and people's experience of that game, rather than us hit numbers, but give them a substandard product. So it's like, you know, it's always that dance where you've got to kind of go, we'll give them as much as we can, but also everything has got to kind of go, I deserve to be here, and I'm going to heighten that experience for people kind of playing Reanimal for the first time. But that's around the number we're kind of aiming at.
Yeah. So obviously with Reanimal, there's like a new experience, a new aesthetic in terms of not only the co-op, but also like with using animal creatures, as you said, like rather than just pure humans. But there's also this kind of through line of like child characters caught in this like gigantic, horrifying world. And is that, I mean, is that kind of horror aspect something you were just kind of thrust into with the first Little Nightmares game, or is that something that's always been kind of your interest, like want to make horror, and particularly horror where like people are caught in this world that's so much bigger and more terrifying than them?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been there since before I even joined, like 15 years ago, you know, when they were making the prototype for City Metronome. That was a kid protagonist as well, you know, and there's something, that's why that title obviously never got made, sadly, but why that resonates so much with me and others that joined, who'd seen the ambition of Tarsier even way back then. There's something about a kid in a world that doesn't like them very much, you know, that's really kind of striking, and it's just the kind of worlds we enjoy making. And because everyone's been in that boat, you know, where you're like looking around and there's just strange things going on that you have to learn to live with. You know, you don't fully get it. You don't understand why these things are so nasty and all that sort of stuff. And there's a nice balance that it strikes. All of that works really well when you want to create horrific things, or things like, you know, this idea of looking at the world with horror. There's something there that's super interesting, and it's not plumbed that much, you know. You're always so much more capable, aren't you? You're always tooled up and all that sort of thing. So it's quite nice. And here we've got like this group of kids, which felt even more important to us as the core of this game. It's like your mates are so important as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like what happens if something happens to you and your mates that kind of just destroys everything. How do you fix that? How do you deal with that as a kid? You know, that's the kind of thing that we kind of got really hooked on here. And then the relationship between kids and animals is such a beautiful one. Whereas here, you know, you got these kids and these monstrous animals, which doesn't mean they're nasty, but that again, we're playing with these conventions of like of kids and animals, and like what does that mean, and all that. It just felt like, so there's a thread there, but also we wanted to like explore new grounds, you know, something that we didn't quite know why we liked it at first, and then you start to explore why afterwards.
So I have this question I like to ask a lot of people. What is when you hear the word horror, what is your own definition of that term? Like, it doesn't even have to be like gamer related, but like, what is horror to you?
Personally, it's not, even though I love jump scares, it's not jump scares. I think for me, it's like being out of control, and all that entails, like all of my worst experiences of horror, whether it's been nightmares or the very few movies that fill me with a sense of horror. It's not been about like, oh, look at that grotesque thing there, or oh, look how they're being torn apart. It's more than that. It's kind of when the things that I've learned to trust can't be trusted anymore, you know, and that can there's something primal there. Like everyone, you build your world, your experience of reality is built on things having rules, about things having boundaries, and when those boundaries get erased, then there's that sense of horror because your whole world comes crashing down. And that's why I kind of adore the dearly departed David Lynch's stuff, because he got there for me. You know, he kind of was in tune with that part of life where it was like, yeah, but this stuff is the unexplored, and that's the stuff where we hide everything that we don't really want to deal with ever. And that's where my horror lies. Okay. I also love 80s VHS horror, you know. It's not like scary, but like if you're asking me the thing that gives myself goosebumps, it's not the VHS horror, but what's my world mean anymore, you know. It's something way more existential, I think, you know, but everyone's different. I think that horror, that term is so loaded that we shied away from it even for so long. You know, we never wanted to call our stuff horror because there's expectation in every single person that hears that word, they think of something else. So
yeah, no, I totally understand. With your depiction of what we spoke about, horror, how do you install that mindset into the games that you work on?
I mean, you can't totally, because it's a group thing. Sure. But what you can do, I mean, I'm a director now, so I have more kind of influence on the kind of stuff we do. But even then, you've got to come to a place where you're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, to coin an old phrase, you know. So this isn't me auteuring a project, but what I can do is sort of push us in ways that kind of resonates with me. But then we've got other people kind of going, yeah, but this is going to be cool, and it becomes about the game then. Like, what does the game want to be? Sure. It's not me do, you know, my awful love letter to David Lynch. So, you know, but yeah, so you can. My influences come from everywhere. It comes from books. You know, it comes from music. Very, very little of my personal influences come from games. You know, I've got maybe like 2 absolute favorite games. I don't play religiously like almost everyone else here. So my influences are all over the place, you know. And you just bring that when you need it, you know, like how do the kids talk, for example. The influence doesn't come from horror, it comes from other places that feel fitting. So yeah, you bring what you can from like, this is my absolute perfect idea of what would be scary here. But then I talked to our cinematic artist, and he's like, yeah, but I think the way we can depict that better is in this way. And so it has to become something else. And that's absolutely right, you know. When we're collaborating, it always becomes like, what does the game what does it feel right to do to make this game the best it can be?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Just on that front as well, it seems to me at least like, and probably there's one example I'm thinking of in particular, but since like kind of the first Little Nightmares came out, and there's almost like it started kind of its own subgenre, it feels like, in terms of these types of games with this like kind of small protagonist in this like really big, like creepy kind of dark fairy tale kind of world, in whatever form that takes. And like there was a game, Bramble the Mountain King, which very much immediately I was like, that's, if you like Little Nightmares, that's right on the like same sort of level. Does it feel like, how does it feel to kind of have like, yeah, we've made these kind of games and it's almost like a genre of its own now? There's people trying to like replicate that. Does that kind of feel good in terms of what you're making?
I can honestly say we've never thought of ourselves as having started anything, so it doesn't feel like anything. You know, we don't kind of go, hey, look at us, Billy Big Bollocks, who's kind of, you know, started this thing. we played. A bunch of people have played Bramble and talked a lot about it. But no, I mean it's cool if we have, but like we were aiming our loves, and that sort of things. Like, oh, we played loads of Silent Hill 2 before we started Reanimal, and so that's where we're kind of looking. And we've never looked at like, well, is anyone doing what we're doing? Because I don't know, it's just never crossed our mind over it. But it's ace if that's true. But I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm kind of might be extrapolating based on my own kind of experience of games, but
I'm taking it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly because like games with that kind of like child protagonist in like a sort of dark world aren't new in their own sense. Obviously, there's stuff like you go back to Heart of Darkness and whatever else, but
amazing game that as well. Yeah.
But it does feel like there's a certain, I suppose, aesthetic, if you like. There's something there, and like I say, I mentioned Bramble because it was the one that stuck out, but I've definitely seen others that kind of like trying to capture that essence and trying to capture that kind of spirit. It feels like.
Yeah, Heart of Darkness. God, we talked so much about that back when we were coming up with Little Nightmares. Me and Dennis, we used to flashback, Another World, Heart of Darkness. It was all those ones, like Heart of Darkness. It was so savage, that game. But yeah, that takes me back.
I wanted to ask regarding just like a little piggybacking on Phil, is just when it comes to a lot of different or other games that are similar to Reanimal, how does Reanimal set itself apart from being known as that, or just have its own way into the field?
I don't know. I think what is true of all, or what should be true of all stuff, is that it's the people making it that makes it stand out. I think all the stuff I love, whether it's like I say, books or music or movies, is like you always know who it's by. You know what I mean? That they've got their own style, and then it doesn't matter so much about like if it's a similar storyline or if they got similar age characters or whatever. Because like nobody writes like Don DeLillo for me, and like nobody makes movies like Shane Meadows. Nobody makes music like Swans. It's so many different things when they come out of certain people, and that's how we keep trying to make our stuff. Is like, yeah, we've got animals in it and the big animals. It doesn't matter if anyone else is making a game filled with big animals, because we're doing something that feels true to us. So apart from the fact like you back of the box stuff, like it's got co-op, it's got a shared directed camera, you go by boat, these are the things that you tell people so they get a picture of the kind of game that you're making. But it's not until they jump into that world and experience it where they're like, this is a Tarsier game, of course it is. And that's what we want, is to try and always think about how things should feel to us. And then we don't have to worry so much about whether someone else has done something with similar characters or whatever. Our art style, I think, is just amazing. And I say that as someone who can't draw for toffee. I think that the stuff they come up with, whether it's the concept art and all the way they light the scenes or the way they level art, everything, it's just like, bloody hell, how'd you do it? I just don't get it.
Yeah, just to piggyback off, you mentioned that the people working on a game really defines what the game will be. What are some of the benefits of working in a team versus somebody who's trying to build a game as a solo dev?
Well, you've got a bunch of specialists, haven't you? You lose that auteurers, and like I was saying before, if someone's just got a vision and they execute on that vision with no compromises whatsoever, like, I'm going to do this for better or worse, this is my vision. Whereas when you've got a group of people, and particularly I've found the people that are drawn to come and work here, they're drawn here for a reason. They want to express themselves in a certain way. They don't just want to come in and it doesn't matter what they do. They don't have to think about what they do. So you get people who've got a very kind of singular way of doing their thing, whether they're artists or musicians or designers or whatever. So you've got all these people who bring really high levels of expertise, with a certain way of looking at the world, and that combination, and when those people then come together to make stuff, you don't know how it's going to come out the other end. So, you know, if you wanted to outear it, it would come out completely different. But I was like, bloody hell, you know, we talk about it more like being in a band than being just kind of like a solo artist. It's, you know, it's that kind of idea. Like, oh man, I never would have played the guitar like that if I'd done it myself. But someone else comes in and they bring so much more to it, you know, than you could have done. So it's like, yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, it's you learn how to kind of kill your darlings, which I probably said more than anything in the world. You know, we're like, oh, if this was my game and I could program or whatever, then I would have done it this way. But then we're like, but you've done something else that I never would have done. So that's also cool. There's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure.
So that whole sense of like, you've got one way you think this is all going to turn out, and then like kind of almost getting surprised constantly of like, oh, and I never would have thought of doing that, never, or this, and hopefully in the majority of cases for the better.
Go. We've got so many plans at the beginning of a project, and then you go, all right, well, let's go in this way instead. That's just like working a Tarsier, like, but the results are good at the end, like, you know, so far. So
yeah, for sure. What are some of the during production and the development of Reanimal, what are some of the like the best moments that you guys had like making the game, and then what are some challenges that you guys faced that have been tough during this process?
I'll have to think about the challenges one. I think one of the best things that happened was when we decided to make co-op. We'd the first thing you think is split screen, isn't it? You know, like, it's gonna have to be split screen, and that's gonna be crap, because this whole idea that we had, one of our main pillars, as you like, has been being scared together. You know, that's how one of the filters that we judge our stuff through. Like, is this about being scared together, or does it kind of go against it? And when it was like split screen, which is the easier way to do a two-player game, it's like, yeah, but then you're not scared together, you're on your own. Yeah, but yeah, we can go off and do our own thing. Yeah, but that's kind of, again, goes against the whole idea of going through this thing together and about this group of friends come back together. We wanted a shared camera. And I used to be a designer at Traveller's Tales many, many years ago, where I was making the Lego games. And the earlier Lego games had that same shared camera until they decided to split. And I loved that shared camera so much, because however annoying it was when my wife would want to go one way and I'd want to go another, and you kind of frozen in this place. There was something about being in that space together which was like really, really nice, and it kind of lends itself very well to co-op gameplay. So we were seeing, can we do that at all with this kind of game? It's full 3D, and we've got loads of different kind of ways that you want to play. How powerful can we make this camera? And was one of the guys did a test on it, and he's like, "Yeah, what do you think of this?" And we're like, "Oh, he's got it!" And he nailed this camera and can do so much with it. It was early days, obviously, but the test itself, we knew we had it then. And that, again, is another piece of the puzzle, like, where all these ideas we'd had about how we want people to be able to play the game and the camera perspectives we wanted to use, this camera could do all of that and always keep the player together, you know. So that was like a real step that in getting Reanimal closer to where it wants to be. Tough stuff. I mean, there's too many, and that's true all the time of game dev. I don't know if I can put my finger on one thing really that's like, I mean, challenge-wise, I'll have to come back to that. I will think on it, but I don't know on that one, because there's
I'll hit you up a week later for the answer. For sure.
role.
Yeah. Don't think I'll keep you to it. I'll DM you and be like, hey, remember that question I asked you about a week ago? It will happen. I promise you. Gotta get my scoop.
So with where we are with like Reanimal now, and obviously kind of coming towards bringing that out, I'm presuming at the moment that's kind of the entirety of your focus. There's no thoughts on other things. So if people to ask, but it's the nature of things these days, I suppose people are always ask, is this going to be like the start of a franchise, or are you going to go be like, this is one and done and then we'll do something else afterwards? So has that even entered your mind at this point, or is it still?
Yeah, I mean, it probably in my mind, because like my job is to always create a world around what we're doing. It helps my job from the beginning. You know, if the story we're telling takes place in a larger world, and that's the way I've always worked. So generally, you start with like your premise, and like, yeah, but how does that work then? And straight away, I need to work back. Who are these kids? What's this place? What's happened and all that? And then how does it resolve itself? And is that it? You know, so you always have to world build a little bit more outside of the game anyway, if you want things to kind of have logic and to feel more real. So I always like to create threads, and whether I go back to them or not is in the lap of the gods, you know, like, but it's always nice, you know, and this is in the lore, you know, and probably will be in the game as well to an extent, where you kind of go, yeah, but what's that? And maybe we don't do much with that or much more with it. But like, if down the line we wanted to come back, or other people wanted us to come back, or whatever, however things pan out, there's stuff there, you know, there's avenues to go down, because this is a bigger thing. But personally as well, I want to be one and done, because I love the new thing. And that's not just like, I don't know, there's something like so invigorating about creating something out of nothing. Like where Reanimal came from, it was just like, all right, let's go, let's do this then. Let's, you know, it's a whole new thing. And you're got to be so creatively charged constantly. Like, you know, when people are asking you, well, yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about that? And you're like, I don't know. It's just an amazing feeling. And so to do more, even though it's nice, if people love it so much that they want more, and then you don't have the stress of creating a new idiom, do you? You know, that's what's nice. But so I don't know, I think stress level wise, it'd be nice to do more. But I think just the creative urge, I think, is like, I just want to always make a new game, or a new characters, and new stories, a new gameplay, everything. It's just so rewarding, that, you know, but it comes with a hell of a lot of stress.
Yeah, I think you've got, if you do the one and done type thing, obviously, you've still got the benefit of that kind of people wanting more, because that's where people come into like reading through the environmental storytelling and all the little hints that you've left and whatever, and start building like fan theories about the world, and what does this mean, and what does this really symbolize, and all that sort of stuff. And I know that was obviously a big part of everything, like even like from like Little Nightmares 1, let alone once you introduce 2. So if you've not given them anything, if there's no sequel, there's no further place to go, it's just like this one place, then there's even more kind of, right, we'll never get any answers to this, so let's make these answers ourselves, like, almost.
Yeah.
It's like open-ended, you know, you leave it to people's imaginations to create the resolution or the final answers to the questions they might have. So I definitely hear that.
We made a game called Static around the same time as Little Nightmares, like a VR game, and that was a one and done. But like, we did look into it, like whether we could go back to that, and if there was any legs in it. And there's people out there that wanted that, like, but again, I got a bit scarred by Star Wars sequels, because you're like, maybe you shouldn't go back, maybe just leave it, leave people happy, you know. But so maybe, I think the way we did it with Little Nightmares was good, and Media Molecule did the same. You know, they did Little Big Planet 1 and 2, and then they handed it over because they knew they wanted to do something new and give people someone else to bring a vision to it. We did that. In fact, we did one of theirs, and we did our thing with it, because it's nice to just kind of, all right, we've made that thing and we feel completely satisfied with it, but let's go back to that place where we're creating something from nothing again. It's like, it's nice feeling.
Yeah. How does it feel like from a creative standpoint when you see like people coming up with like the fan theories and like the YouTube video essays and whatever else about the world? Is that something where you're like, okay, I've kind of done this, I'll leave it to everyone else, or do you kind of like watch that stuff and like think, oh, well, you're wrong about that though?
Yeah, I do that, but I would never say that, because I mean that's the same with like anyone, like unless they explain everything. Anyone who's written a book or made a movie, people will have their own ideas about it, and I love that. I was an English literature guy, like at uni, so like I would always be theorizing about what I think went on in a book. But it'd be rubbish, if like one of the authors was like that. No, that's completely wrong, mate. Yeah, but I've got all the evidence. No, sorry, no. So I love it. We never dreamt that it would be that way, because we were like scrabbling for money to make the first Little Nightmares. Like, we got a bit of money here, we can do a bit here, and we can make it, we can fund a design document, really struggling to get this thing that we thought could be cool made. So to see now, oh yes, it's I don't know how many millions the two games have sold now, and how many people are theorizing about what we've done. It's just mental that it's gone that far. It's amazing, But yeah, it's fun to read the theories, but I would never jump in and say, actually, because if someone, to my mind, if someone's can back up what they're saying, then they're right.
Yeah,
that's how it should be.
To piggyback off some of that, just people just having like game essays and stuff. How do you guys feel about like people trying to break your game, as in speedrunners, and just like finding these bugs and try to beat the game as fast as possible? Does it make you guys cringe knowing that there's a way that they can get out of bounds, or or just try to beat the game in like an hour when it's not anticipated for that to be happening?
I mean, yeah, you could never build that into it, could you? I mean, but I think it's amazing that people can do that. The speed running thing. I was QA for like 4 years, so like if I'd been QA here, I would have been feeling bad, like, oh damn it, I should have seen that exploit.
Do you guys go back in the game in the development? It's like, okay, we can fix this real quick so nobody else can do it.
We're doing so many playthroughs at the moment, like we found some places where a speedrunner could exploit it. So we're in two minds whether to leave it for them as a little treat or to close it off. They'll find something else anyway, won't they?
For sure. With the power of social media, like, and when you're like posting a game about the game Reanimal, how does the feedback from like just fans impact the development of your game? Do you guys like implement some of the ideas that people might have, or how do you guys go about that process?
I mean, they've only seen the teaser and the trailer so far, so we haven't had too much kind of feedback other than when's it coming out, that kind of thing.
When is it coming out? You could tell us. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it comes back to that thing where like we trusted our guts as far as when we made our past games. This feels like the thing to do. Let's trust that and give people that, and so they know that we've made this game for them. But if we start trying to make the game for them, what we think they want from us, then we start to lose that, I think, maybe. So it sounds really dickish to say we don't listen to people in that way, but I think it's more important that we give them the best of what we think, if that makes sense. That like if they like our stuff, then we have to trust that we're still on point with that, that we kind of go, this is cool. They've not had this from us yet. Let's give them that instead of trying to second guess constantly, But to say that, like I said before, with the co-op stuff, we saw people were clamoring a little bit for co-op from these games. So that kind of stuff we heard, and like, all right, let's have a go at that. You know what I mean? But we'll see. If some good feedback comes in, we'd be stupid to not listen to it. So it's not like it's not an arrogance or anything, but it's more just that we don't want to slip into trying to like do fan service or anything kind of,
Yeah, there's that risk of like over course corrected, isn't there? Like where you could be like, trying too hard to like please everyone and please no one in the process. And
exactly. And a lot of games do that, don't they? Like they kind of user test it to death. And so it becomes like a horse by committee in the end, like, well, this will please as many people as possible. And what is it though? Whose vision is this? Well, it's everyone's vision. We all share this vision of a bland game, we try and steer away from that. And but yeah, I think if anything comes up where like, shit, we didn't see that. If we can fix it, we will. But
No, for sure. And I totally understand what you're saying. It's just like if you let too many cooks in the kitchen, it stops becoming your guy's vision and becomes everybody else's vision. And at that point, is it even your game anymore? So like, I totally respect it. I get it.
Well, I mean, speaking of fan feedback and everything, we've did go out for questions for people wanted to ask directly of you. So we got a few from a few different sources, including we do have, I'm going to start off, I think, with a video question from Alfredo, who very kindly sent this in. So let me just, where are we? I'm going to edit this bit out when I try and figure out how to share the screen.
I was going to say, I have a random loofah right here. I promise you it was part of a gift but yeah.
But yeah, can we all see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll play this and then we'll go through the other questions as well. But this is our first video question we've had.
Hi, I'm Fred, and my question from Mr. Mervik is about pre-production during the development of a Tarsier game. As I'm a concept artist, so I'm really curious about it. So, what's your team's approach and creative process to conceive the terrifying creatures that populate the worlds of your games and that we'll see in the next game, Reanimal? I can't wait to play it, and thank you for your answer.
There we
That's
go.
a great question. Really good question. As far as the process goes, it's very, very early on that we start getting concept art through. We, by that point, we usually know the very basics, like, an island. We knew we wanted to have it on an island, and we knew we wanted it to be about like one or two kids, but this is depending whether we were single player or co-op at the time, and it was like a group of friends. So they have that information, and then they go nuts, and it's that simple. I mean, we've seen it's just people having ideas. Hey, this would be cool if you did this. This would be cool, and you're like that. Whoa! You just don't know where it comes from. And I think there's about 1, 2, 3 or 4, I think, concept artists all just like piling in and giving their view of what this world could be that these kids inhabit and what became animals, and then it is just literally people feedbacking on it, like every week we'd have the whole studio gets together and we show new stuff, and people kind of go, whether they say it at the time or if they write afterwards, I didn't like this so much, that felt a bit much, or didn't feel interesting enough, but this I really liked, and so the concept artists then know what's resonating with people, and they then may pick an avenue and they go down that avenue further. That sort of the stuff, or like the way that felt, or the texture on that. It's, as I remember, it's many several years ago now, but that's kind of how it went. In terms of where these monsters come from, I just couldn't tell you. I mean, it's that simple. And I've said this from the start. I don't know where they come from. I know part of what goes into them now is very practical. Like in past games, we've had, well, I want this monster to move in this way. I want their body to perform this action because there's fun gameplay in that. And I also want it to be inspired by, so for example, with the teacher in Little Nightmares 2, there's like Japanese yokai inspirations in there. There's Nurse Ratched from One Foot the Cuckoo's Nest influences in there. There's these things that's kind of that don't seem to fit together, and they fit together and all this. So there's a lot of it comes from behaviors. When it comes to the monsters, we want the monsters to do a certain thing, but then how they get wrapped, how we make the monsters able to do these behaviors comes from all sorts of different dark places. But yeah, I mean, stuff seems to just float to the surface, when they're inspired by certain things around similar times, and you kind of see the monsters in this game, their limbs feel connected. There's something about the visuals of their limbs which I find upsetting. So yeah, I'm sorry, that's the best I can kind of say on that, because not being a concept artist, I can't tell you how that happens, but I'm always surprised by what comes out. But it's very important that we have a core with the monsters, particularly that there is a core that is of interest and has potential for being a monster in one of our games, because if it just looks cool, it can't do shit. So it's not very much fun, and it certainly doesn't feel threatening, because, well, how are you going to move when you look like that? So it's like, it comes from a very practical place and then goes to a horrifying one.
So as mentioned, we've got a few other questions that people have sent in through the official Reanimal Discord as well as Twitter. Some of them we've already had answered. Like, quite a few people were asking about the main inspirations for Reanimal, including the inspiration for co-op, and obviously we've talked in some detail about that already. I don't know if there's anything additional you want to say that been touched on.
No, I mean, when we decided to make a co-op, we just looked at all of the best examples of co-op games out there, and played a lot of them. And obviously, with the kind of atmosphere we were going for, we again looked at the best examples of this kind of thick atmosphere, where you just dread being in it. And, well, basically we played Silent Hill 2 a lot.
What were some of the co-op games did you guys play, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
I know. Well, I can tell you one of them, because it bears no relation to the game that we're making. But we played It Takes Two. Okay. We played. What else did we play? We played Sackboy's Big Adventure, and that was a bit of nostalgia because we'd made one of those games. But with It Takes Two, we played. But that's very much, it's a different kind of game, and it's a great game, don't get me wrong, but to have that kind of like, here's your new toy and here's how we split it up, it's so novel and so gamey in the best sense. It would have killed this game, because you're thrown out the world constantly, because there's always a new dart to throw at an oversized dartboard or whatever. It was the feeling of co-op there. We kind of took a lot of, like, the fun that you can have and the different experiences that are possible. But so much of that just would have destroyed Reanimal. So you can, but what you take from things isn't always, yeah, well, we'll just literally take that and put it in our game. It's like, we mustn't do that because it would be to the detriment of what we're trying to do. So it's still really valuable.
Okay, should we go through some of the other questions that we've received then? Okay, so one of our other jury members, Kiba, has asked, since you made your exit from Little Nightmares, how do you feel about someone else taking the reins of the lore that you wrote? And what was it that ultimately made you decide to depart from the franchise, if that's something you can speak about?
Yeah, I can. I mean, we've been thinking about stepping away anyway. Or not stepping away, rather. We've been thinking we missed doing something new, like we talked about before. Was that, you know, even when we talked about doing a sequel to Little Nightmares, I was like, oh, I didn't even want to bring 6 back because it's just like, oh, but we've done 6, you know, we've done this, and it's just, and that's me just being selfish, like wanting to just always do something new. And then when we were coming to the end of the second one, it was like, oh, we're getting that feeling again. But it'd be nice to, because we were so excited when we were coming up, you know, it was Hunger back in the day. And then when we were coming up with Static, you know, and all that feeling of like, oh, I want that again, that feeling, like that's what the company was built upon, of creating new worlds and new stuff. So we've been thinking along those lines anyway. And then we got bought. We got bought by Embracer. So that made the decision for us, because obviously, you know, Bandai owned the IP. That's how we could afford to make those 2 games. So they owned the IP. And since we were then acquired by what effectively became a competitor or another publisher, we parted ways. So it was like, we've been thinking that way, and then life went that way. So it just kind of happened. What was the other part of the question? Oh yeah, how does it feel? You know what? It feels nice. It does. We worked with Supermassive a little bit in the past on when we were making Little Big Planet Vita. They did, as I remember, that's a long time ago now, but as I remember, they made like these kind of the mini games that you could play like on the Vita. You know, they made some really cool mini games, as I remember. And then obviously they went on to do what they've done, you know, like the Dark Pictures stuff. So it made sense, you know, for them, you know, to be picked. We just kind of want to see what they've done with it, you know. I mean, we're seeing trailers and stuff now, and like gameplay footage and all that. So, but it's quite exciting, to be honest. I mean, once you let go of it, like I miss writing the lore for that world. I got such a kick out of writing the lore for that world. But it's over. It's done with, isn't it? So you either moan for the rest of your life, or you just move on, you know, like, all right, that's someone else's now, and they're going to do what they do with it, and I've got no say in that, and that's fine. So I kind of want to see where they go, to be honest. It's like we know nothing other than what everyone else is seeing. We don't have any inside track anymore. So yeah, it'll be nice, you know, and I think they're coming out within similar, well, decades, I guess. I don't know when it's coming out. So, but it'd be nice to see that out in the world, and then ours is out in the world, and you know, our fans will hopefully like our games as much as that one. So that's just two cool games that are going to be out in the world. I think it's great, like you said before, about these kind of subgenres, you know, that have come out there. I think people get a real kick out of these kind of worlds and these kind of games. You know, they get a bit more now, which is right. I miss the days of the platformers, when platformers were king. You know, the 3D platformers, and even further back, the 2D ones. It doesn't get made now. Like Astro came out, and then what do we get? You know, we've got to wait another 5 or 6 years for another title of that quality. And I would love it if suddenly that was the trend, and everyone was making really, really cool 3D platformers for me. So I think it's only positive. that, you know, people that like those kind of games get more of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Another question.
I love Astro. I'm supposed to like dark and gothy stuff, I guess, but now I'm a platform fiend.
Yeah, this kind of touches back to some of the things we've already talked in, but this person's named Budin, and it's the question was, what are the main inspirations toward Reanimal, and was it planned to be co-op since the beginning? Again, you touched a little bit about it, but is there anything else you wanted to add towards that?
Inspiration-wise, trying to think. No, do you know what I'll tell you? I don't think I'm not allowed to say this, but at least from my side of things, some of the first stuff because I read a lot. When we decide we're going to do we have a basic premise and characters and stuff. I kind of just buy and borrow all the books and material I can find and just swamp myself in it for months and months and months. And then out the other side of that comes the story. I always hope it's going to work that way, and it always has so far. But like, I never know what the story's going to be until I've finished doing all that reading and watching and blah blah blah. And some of the first stuff that took me this time was actually witch trials. I didn't know in Sweden there was like a whole witch craze that went on, and that led me to the witch craze of Europe and all these things that you kind of don't know about. So I was starting to look at ideas about that for this. Like, is there anything we can plumb there? You know, and these kind of like these terrible things that happened when someone just sort of like some kid. They used to like use kids as witnesses, and a kid would say, "I saw my mom saying hello to the devil," and then their mom would be executed. I'm like, that can't be real. But it was, and this stuff happened in this country just 100 years ago. It's just insanity to me. And so I just went down that rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh, no, we can't make a game about witches, can we? And I tried. And so for a while, I was thinking along those lines. But then it just kind of gradually, it morphed again, and then morphed again. And it just became about violence. I got to the core of it, and it was violence. And that's been my watchword every time. It's like, what do you think of this artwork? What do you think of this music? What do you think of this? Violence has got to have a violence to it, and that, you know, that's the kind of core of the story for me, is that it's like violence and the consequences of violence and the expressions of violence in all their forms, you know. And it all came from reading these books about witches in I think it was the 1600s, something like that. So you heard it here first, folks. It all started with grot bags. That's for the kids of my age. They'll get that reference.
We'll put that in the title with quotations, violence.
So our next question, like these ones come from the official Reanimal Discord, but it's just Lord asks, as a narrative designer, how's the transition been from working on a game with no dialogue to working with Reanimal, where we can now hear pieces of spoken dialogue, which was highlighted in the trailer? Have you fully embraced this change, or are you still leaning towards a more cryptic approach in how information is presented and how the player observes this information while playing?
I mean, we're still even kind of crafting it now, because it's a hard balance to strike, you know. It was an uphill struggle to even get the test done, because we have always made games with a don't talk, and I didn't want to just sort of leave it there. I just thought, well, maybe there's a way that we can do what we do with words as well, you know, how we use visuals and how we use context, all these different how we kind of do our work and create our worlds. Surely there's an approach to dialogue that can fit within that as well. So I did a bunch of tests. The first ones were in Danish, funnily enough, because we got an in-house voice actor who's naturally Danish, and so she did the test for me. It's like, oh, I quite like Danish, but you know, it had a kind of a feel of its own. So that helped inform the delivery of the lines, just that. But then, yeah, I mean, we found a way of doing it where the approach is basically, since all these kids know what they know, this is where I'm going to tread very carefully, so I don't just go, "Oh, I talk to people in work about this, and it's fine. It's not a secret." I'll try not to spoil anything though. So these kids know what they know about what's happened, so they don't need to tell each other about what they know about what's happened, because that is one of my bugbears about whether it's game dialogue or movie dialogue, is where people, or TV is the worst for it, because they need to remind the cheap seats, you know, remember that time you're looking at your phone in the last episode? Well, just remind you again about what's happened. So it's like that. You're like, hey, remember that thing that we did about 2 years ago where you said that and I did this and now this has happened? It's like, who talks like that? Nobody talks that way in real life. So it's like that. And the nice thing about that approach is it makes the player an outsider, and I really like that feeling. Is like, you know, if you went into a room and there's two people talking about something, they don't want you to know what they're talking about. They're like, yeah, remember that thing that we talked about yesterday? Like, what thing? And it makes you pay attention in a different way, rather than go to sleep and be told everything to feel and to think. So that's the approach we've taken. But like I say, there's still areas like when you go through where you cringe a little bit, like, that's telling people too much. That's, you know, no one would say that, Ben. So it's like lots of cuts still happen at the minute where we're seeing how much we can pull back and still give people enough to go on. But yeah, the main approach has been that, like, keep players intrigued by taking as realistic and grounded approach to the dialogue as possible. And Shane, like I said before, Shane Meadows was a big influence there. The way he gets his actors acting. Ken Loach is the same, you know, uses locals and uses people who aren't kind of destroyed by stage school to, you know, to do that. So he hears the way people talk and he uses that to create characters that you can believe a bit more. So our kids, they talk like kids talk, and anywhere where the kids don't talk like kids talk, I've had to cut. You know, that's my fault. But we'll see. We'll see how people get on with it. I mean, that's how it is. You never know, do you? Like, you'll say, go back to not talking ever again. All right, you know. But everything needs to fit together and feel kind of right, and not stand out as like, no, I'm thrown out of the world now. So we judge everything the same way there. Does this make me cringe a bit? Right, then it goes.
For sure. Another question is, what is the place Reanimal takes place in called, by the way, while you're
here? Doesn't have a name.
Doesn't have a name.
No. It does have a name, like they will know what it's called, but it's not like, you know, this takes place in Wichita or whatever. I don't know. It didn't feel like it needed a name.
Gotcha.
Right now. It's just because there's already enough to take in. But again, if you give it a name, then you kind of would expect the characters to use that name multiple times, and again, that would start to feel weird. So if anything, we would put a little sign up, but, you know, maybe down the line we'll reveal the name of it. But the same with Little Nightmares. The only reason people know the moor is called the moor is because we told them it was called the moor. Like, you know, there was no kind of sign there until what was it? We had a poster at the end of LN2. But yeah, so we'll see how we do with that kind of stuff, if we do any more with this. But no, it's no kind of.
People do like signs. That says blatantly, this is the place, like Silent Hill, like this is Silent Hill. Resident Evil, you know, Raccoon City. So if you want to throw a sign, I mean, I'm sure the feedback might be good.
I'm gonna steal that.
So we've got a couple of questions here which are asking about things in the game, which I imagine you'll have to be very tight-lipped on. I'm going to read them out just for kind of completeness as well. But so, as we've had, for example, asking whether the children's ages will be revealed in the game and whether we'll get an answer to why they, it says where, like, I think that's meant to be dressed like the way they do. And someone else asking what's the mother supposed to be based off or represent. Just seeing if
so go through them one by one again.
Sorry,
go through them one by one again. My memory's like terrible these days. Like, what was the first question?
There's a couple of others, but I'll read them each. But so, will the children's ages be revealed in the game, and will we get an answer to why they dress like they do?
No, I don't think their age really matters, does it? You know, like, oh, she's 11 and a half. But like, they're you know, they're around that age, aren't they? You know, they're not so capable that you don't worry about them, but they're not so young that you worry too much. I think we always like to strike that kind of a balance. They're a bit older than kids than we've done in the past. I think that's good. I think it's nice because we're facing them with a bit more here, a bit more, you know, nasty themes and a bit more of a dread-filled world. So you also want them to feel at least able to cope with that. And if you drop someone who's like too young into that, then it becomes a bit cruel. So no, we won't be revealing their ages, but you should have an idea, I think, when you see them that they're older. What was the other bit?
What the mother's supposed to represent. I think
you might get an idea. We do have little clues in there. And a lot of it will be, you might have to hypothesize about. There's a reason why, why we cover our characters' faces. We've always done that. We just like to do it. It's like, it's a practical thing. It's something that keeps the mystery there as well, though. There's something about, like, when you cover a character's face, you're like, why? And why did you do it that way? Instead of just seeing this, you know, character mesh talking at you. So there's something that creates a nice little bit of intrigue there. We did it even with static. We just pixelated that guy's face. And like, why? And why is it pixelated? So that it's nice to ask questions in that way.
Yeah. I was looking at the other questions are about Little Nightmares rather than about Reanimal, in terms of like questions about answers to lore mysteries.
They'll never stop though, will they? And I'll never stop saying I'm not telling you.
Yeah, I'll hand back to Avery for the next one.
Yeah, so will there be any optimizations to avoid shader or transversal stutter, such as a shader pre-compilation at game launch? And are any upscaling technologies such as DLSS, FSR, or XESS going to be included? If so, what versions of each are planned?
You are talking to the wrong guy.
All right, next question. Get back to me in a week.
Slightly in the Magic Roundabout theme tune, just play with me.
Tell your people to come to my people. We'll talk about that.
You can send me that question if you like, and I'll ask someone in that area, and they'll say they'll know the answer, but I could not tell you what any of that meant. I didn't worry.
I'm just gonna go to the next one. So, will Tobias make the music for Reanimal?
No, sadly, Tobias doesn't work with us anymore. He's been gone. He was here for a short while in the beginning of Reanimal, but he's working freelance now. Miss him very much, though. Me and him used to have lots of cool conversations and stuff, and we worked together creating the titles for the soundtracks that he made for Little Nightmares 1 and 2. And I really, really miss. It was always my favorite part of a project, is like coming up with the names for the songs. So he's very missed, but yeah, he's not here anymore with us. We have 3 audio dudes now who are working on the music for this game.
Nice. I think it'd be interesting to see once we get more of the soundtrack, because I know, like, I mean, horror games in general, but particularly like the Little Nightmares soundtrack was obviously something really. I just love horror soundtracks in isolation, even without playing the game and like listening to them. So again, I'll be interested to see what comes out with Reanimal as far as that goes as well.
What's your favorite horror soundtrack then?
Oh, that's tough. It kind of goes between, like, I'll constantly like re-listen to like the old Resident Evil ones.
Right.
The Alan Wake 2 soundtrack is kind of constantly on my like
I got a weird
Spotify playlists at the moment, but
for me, Deadly Premonition. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that game. The soundtrack was one of my favorites. It was just
really
quirky and just different. I think that game was probably the worst game I've ever played. That it was so bad that it was good in a way. I don't know how to explain it. It's one of those games that is just, it shouldn't work, but it was a masterpiece at the same time.
Oh, nice. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, Deadly Premonition. Highly recommend looking it up.
That was like one of my 80s VHS action movies, that. Deadly Premonition.
it does sound like it should star Steven Seagal.
Yes. Okay.
Honestly, when you see it, it kind of gives you that
vibe. So next question, the last one that's on the from the Discord was asking about if there are new themes or game mechanics in Reanimal that you weren't able to try out in previous games, either because they bloated the story or clashed with pre-established conventions.
No, I mean, I don't think so. No, I mean, we never felt kind of like hamstrung by anything. We always just kind of go, oh, that doesn't fit. It's not like we were desperate to get it in anyway. And so stuff just kind of comes to it. And I think that what's new here is like the boat stuff, you know, like, because we had an island, we were like, maybe it'd be nice to get around in a more interesting way. So, you know, that sort of stuff. And there's some nice co-op stuff on the boat there, where you're like one of you's got like the lantern, and you're kind of looking for danger and stuff while the other one's driving. That kind of stuff. It wasn't like forbidden before, but it would have been weird to just be on a boat in the middle of Pale City, wouldn't it? Like, well, we're not going anywhere. So it was kind of the locations really kind of prevented that one. But no, I mean, we try stuff. We do a lot of motifing, which is what we've done ever since Little Big Planet, which is just creating ideas and turning those ideas into something you could just drop in the game. And so we tried a whole bunch of stuff, and some of it sticks because it's fun to do and it feels right for the world. Some stuff doesn't, and it goes, but it's not like we pre-edit ourselves, if you know what I mean, in that way. So no, I don't think so. Don't think there's anything.
Okay, cool. This is a question from Twitter. Do you like to see the fan art, both Little Nightmares and Reanimal?
Do we like seeing the fan art?
Yeah.
We love it. Yeah. I mean, we that was part of the reason that Andreas set up the Discord, like, because we started getting more and more through, you know, on our channels and like what people are doing. Like, bloody hell. I mean, some people would like actually, you know, mail it to us like on paper. Like, people post things still. It's like, we've got to have a better outlet for this stuff, because people are getting so much effort. And we really appreciate it. And we can't just keep putting it on the fridge, which we've got loads of fan art on the fridge in the kitchen. So we did the Discord, and like people posted there, and it's ace. I mean, I think it's amazing that we do anything and people take time to do their kind of own expression of it.
I think there are people who would definitely be proud to be on your fridge, though.
Yeah, sure. Kind of like, top of the heap gets the fridge.
And how big is your fridge? You got a lot.
We got 1 and 3 fridges. So,
Okay.
maybe we could have like a winner's podium. The freezer maybe could be for the worst. You get put in the freezer. No one wants to be put on the freezer. I don't know. That would be me every time, though. My boy Mike is really getting into art now, and I'm ashamed to say he's kind of like drawing things from the Reanimal sticker sheet that I got from Japan. I'm like, that maybe I'm kind of destroying his brain. He's only 6. But, like when people see these things, they kind of do something to their brain, like, oh, I'm going to do it. And it's amazing to have done something like that.
For sure.
So as I mentioned, we got like a few different questions. Like the next question from Twitter was asking, will it be revealed in the game story what happens to make the world the way it currently is? Which I'm assuming is just basically the answer is spoilers.
Well, it's not like you get to the end and say, and this all happened because of that day on the roundabout. It's it's more like it's always there. Some stuff we hide in plain sight. Some stuff you got to search out and you got to think about a little bit, but it's all there for you to get a good sense of what might have happened, I would say. So, but we don't do a big like dun 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 or anything like that, because
Dang, I was hoping for that.
Sleep until you get to the end. Then, like, what do I need to pay attention for? They'll tell me at the end it was all about the roundabout. That's not the end, by the way. But you know what I mean? It's just this like look around. If people don't care, which is totally fine, they can play the game, and it's the end. Doink. That's fine. But if people do care, then they can look around a bit more and listen to what's said and think about what's happening, and there are answers there.
And then they can ask those answers and you'll never tell them.
I'm not telling you. As ever.
I totally get it.
The other part of that question was saying to describe the characters' personalities in one word. So I suppose that's an interesting question in terms of how much do each of the individual characters have their own personality, or is that dictated by the player?
No, they do. They do. Again, I was probably guilty of giving them too much personality, and I've had to kind of rein that in, because I mean, I have a terrible habit of being too jokey in real life, and when I'm writing stuff, I always want to go, yeah, but this will be funny. I'm thinking like Hudson in Aliens or Ash in Evil Dead. It's always like, yeah, but this will be funny, and so you have to pull that in. And one of the characters is one of my favorites, and I always give him the line like that, like, oh no, I can't because it kills the mood. So they do have them, but if we do more with this game, and if we we do other stuff around it, maybe you'll see a bit more of that then. But here it's kind of these characters, I would say they're broken. Like the island, this group of friends has been broken, so that's probably the word I would use to describe them. And maybe down the line you see how they can be less broken, or how they get broken. There's all ways to explore that, but when you just see something as it is, then there's not really that much room for jokes or kind of expressing personality, especially when we try and be as restrained and minimalist as possible. You can't do too much of that, but it's there, and I am fighting the urge every day to.
I think you could probably get away with that in the future. You just have to make it a horror game that specifically stars like little scousers. As long as they're from Liverpool, they can make all the stupid jokes that they want.
Like those kids in the milk advert from the 80s. Astons and Stanley, who are they?
That's funny.
I don't even know where you begin to explain that to someone who's not. That's where I'm just looking at Avery from the United States and you're like, yeah, I don't know how to explain the context of this.
Nope, not at all. And that's why I leave it to you guys.
I've
I'll stay in my own lane.
I've lived in Sweden for like 15 years now, so my accent erodes and erodes because every time if I get drunk or whatever and I start talking in my home accent, you see people like that. What? And so you get tired of people saying what, so you just kind of your accent just fades away a bit, and then it comes right back when I'm talking to Phil.
Yeah, you just have to
I
learn
feel like
to like slow down.
Yeah, I feel like when I don't understand, I just nod. I'm like, yeah, okay. Hey, no, I hate saying what just because it's just like I know people don't like to repeat themselves, so I just like, oh, sure, and I just try to put the context together and just go from there. For sure.
You only have so many times you can say what as well before like it's just you didn't understand the first time or the second time, then you kind of have to go okay as if you do, because like if you ask again it's like it just feels awkward.
For sure. Another question on Twitter: what is the process of coming up with these monsters? Is it something completely from scratch, or are there usually references? And then there's another part of that question: and how long does it take to agree on the final solid design for the monsters? It's a question about both for like Little Nightmares or Reanimal, whenever you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I mean, it comes from a behavior, and then they look everywhere for how to wrap that behavior, but it's not like let's nick that idea. Like I want them to stare in a certain way, or I want the skin or their hair to have a certain feel to it, and so you're looking for very, very particular things. That was done nicely there, wasn't it? Or the way that transformation took place, that was really nice there. So there's thousands of influences on that, and it gets smashed together and like, yeah, this is what I'm after. So it can just be like a feeling that you're looking for, or yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say more than I said earlier, really, because like I would just do them a disservice. A lot of it comes from imagination and the processing of past influences, and their own creativity, the kind of stuff they come out with.
So yeah, like I say, a few of the remaining questions are stuff that either we've already covered or that we know we won't get an answer to. Because, like, for example, is the waxed bellman dead? And if so, who murdered him and why?
You know what? That character has a life of his own. I mean, it's like, I think it's on one piece of concept art in an art book, and was there at Gamescom. And it's so many questions about the waxed bellman. I have lots of answers as well, but sadly, I'm not in charge of the lore anymore. So I'd love to answer that question, but I won't.
I respect it. Will there be any? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say the question you might be able to answer is in terms of Little Nightmares. Was there anything you guys wanted to add but just didn't have the time or resources to do?
No, it was never about time. It was always about taste and fit. So we got everything in that we wanted in. Okay. Some stuff was great, but it threw off the balance, or it broke the momentum. Whatever it was, it didn't belong there for a reason. So that's how we always work. It's not like we're just forbidden from putting something great in that would have made the game a million times better. It's like, nah, this is killing it, so we kill it.
Okay.
Kill it.
Will there be any collectibles in the game, such as hats or etc.? Anything that people can collect?
I'm probably okay saying yes.
Okay.
I think it's a safe bet. How about that? It's a good bet. We like things like that, but I don't know if is that like an announcement type thing. I don't know. Yeah, we love collectibles.
Okay.
Exclusive. There will be collectible.
Game has collectibles. Shock horror. I don't know. I don't know. You never know what happens down the line, but we love collectibles, so we're looking at it for sure.
You might see a tweet later. There will be collectibles by first here by Suavity. No, I'm just kidding.
And in terms of the remaining questions, I think the question about whether 6 will be involved in Little Nightmares 3 is one we might have to take to Supermassive if we can get them on the show.
Yeah. We know nothing.
Is that exciting to like a story that you created to like genuinely be going into it like third installment and know nothing and be like, okay, I get to experience this as if I was just a fan watching it and like playing it for the first time?
And again, to go back to how it was with Media Molecule and LBP, like when we took over, when we did Little Big Planet Vita, they were like that, listen, don't ask us stuff because we want to see what you do. And if you ask us, we will give you our thoughts, and we don't want to, you know what I mean? We'll be right back in there and we'll get involved, and we just want to see what you do instead. And I think that was very, very wise on their part. So even if they wanted to talk to us about stuff, they don't need to, do they? But like, we'd probably be the same, like, no, don't, because, you know, we'll have opinions, and no one likes opinions. Or no one needs them. It's best to go with your own ideas and like come up with your own stuff. And this is our take on Little Nightmares in this case. I think it's tons better. So yeah, can't wait to see what they do.
Yeah.
Now, you might not be able to answer this, but any rough ideas of Reanimal release date? First exclusive?
Yeah, we've got ideas about our release date. Yeah.
Okay. Listen, you answered the question, so I can't even be mad about it.
Yeah, I mean that covers the questions that we've had. Like I say, when we asked for people to send in questions, that pretty much covers all of them there. So thank you for taking the time to answer them as well.
Can I ask one final question, if you don't mind?
By all means.
Say that I'm inspiring game developer, like I want to be a game developer, and I ran into you on the street. What is some advice that you would give to an upcoming person that wants to get into the field of game development?
Don't do it. I'd say turn back. I'd be more careful running into me on the street. I don't know. I think nowadays, because I've been in it since what year are we in now? Like 20 years I've been doing this. Like,
okay.
And so I was lucky enough, like my big brother Phil was like was a designer at a company called Warthog in Manchester. And he got me some work experience because I didn't know what to do when I came out of uni. I was trained for nothing. So I kind of got a job in QA. And that's how it worked for me. Like I was there for like 3.5, 4 years. And then I got to go in design. And then from design, I moved into narrative and stuff like that. Nowadays, you just got to get educated because it's so competitive. You can't just go, oh, but my brother will go. It just doesn't work like that. Maybe in some cases, but you know, there's so many talented people. Go to school, whatever you're interested in. School will make it better. You know, learn the fundamentals of telling a story, learn how to use Maya, learn how to use Unreal or Unity, learn how to use like Wise if you're into audio. So many different things you can do, and it's free. A lot of these programs, but just learn, because if you learn how to use tools, then you know how to express yourself with those tools. Is the best thing you can do. And maybe school isn't the right thing for you, but like if you're driven, you can still learn how to do stuff as a hobby or, you know, whatever it is, but just learn how to use the tools that will help you do that job, I think. And then don't always just do what people expect. I can't tell you, like, when I see people's portfolios, if they come for a job, if I feel like, oh yeah, this is just what you're supposed to do, isn't it? Here's an FPS, here's and you kind of like, but why here then? So if you're really into something, if you're really into a certain kind of game or a certain kind of art style or a certain kind of music, don't still do what you think other people want to see. Do that thing that you think is amazing, and then people will have an idea about you as an artist, however that is. Because if you just like, oh, I've done this techno music, well, I hate techno, but you're supposed to do techno music for your portfolio, then who are you compared to anybody else? So just learn, if you're really driven to be in the games industry, learn how to be something cool in the games industry, because that's what we're crying out for. Is people who've got a vision, who need to express something in a way that they really care about, I think would be my advice. And then you, by this point, you'd be like, I just bumped into you on the street, man. Just let me go. It's been 20 minutes. Real. I just wanted to pass the time of day. You weirdo.
Well, I hope I run into you in the street, because I think that would be one hell of an experience.
So before we kind of wrap up, like in terms of either Reanimal or just in general, is anything kind of else you wanted to add or say that we've not really covered, do you think?
No, I probably talk too much now, haven't I? You know, I can't think of anything at all anymore. But no, it's been some amazing questions though, like from yourselves and from the people that wrote in and videoed in. Good job, that chap sent a video of himself.
Yeah, we're hoping as this season of the show goes on to have more video or call in segments as well, because I think it's good to hear someone else ask questions as well as us, because like, you know, if we talk to developers and other people all the time, and kind of it's always good to have a fresh perspective as well, think of questions that we might not have thought of or might not have asked 1,000 times or whatever else. So
that was fun. That it reminded me of Games Master. Do you remember that, where like the kid would just show up and they'd have a question about, it felt like that. It's just like it felt a bit fresh just seeing like someone else on the telly all of a sudden.
yeah, God, that's a blast from the past.
That's all I knew. I just talk about the past because it was better.
Well, in terms of Reanimal, then obviously we're not going to get the scoop on the release date, sadly. But in terms of looking forward to it and supporting it, the main things people always ask is obviously to wish list. Is there anything else you kind of add beyond that, or just wish list it and show support for it?
Do you know what? Like, it's I thought wish listing was kind of pointless, and then you kind of hear that it does actually make a difference. It lets people know, you know, like our publishers lets them know that there's actually people that are really looking forward to this, and that's good for them. And then when they tell us, then we're super happy as well. Like, wow, you know, that many. So it's really nice. So yeah, wish list it for sure, and also watch this space, because you know, who knows what might happen soon. That's me being coy, by the way. Did it work?
Who knows what might happen soon? Something.
Dun dun dun.
Oh, I did a dun dun dun, didn't I? At the end of the show.
Yeah, well, thank you very much again for talking to us. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. It really was.
And we're all looking forward to Reanimal coming out and seeing just exactly what we have in store and what kind of horrors we can visit on us, particularly if it's a co-op. And I'm remembering the first time my wife played Little Nightmares and the screams out of her, so I'm thinking that might be a very fun experience for us both.
Yeah, we'll try and do that for you again then.
Yeah, I really do look forward to playing Reanimal. I think it's going to be quite an experience, especially that I can share it with somebody else. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks very much. We really hope you like it when it comes out.
Yep.
Oh,
and as always, thanks to everyone for watching, and we will see you on the next one. This has been Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Thank you very much for listening. Check out the links in the description for more info on where to follow our guests in order to support them and keep up to date with their work. The Horror Game Awards will be airing live on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to avoid missing out on what promises to be a very exciting night of awards and game reveals, as well as future episodes of this podcast and other content. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.